Romans chapter 8, verses 22 through 27. This doesn't seem much at first glance, perhaps like a Pentecost reading, but this is the lectionary reading for today. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now. And not only creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the breath, groan inwardly while we await official recognition as God's children, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the breath also assists us in our weakness, for while we do not know how to pray as is necessary, the same breath intercedes with inexpressible groans. And the one examining the mind knows the mindset of the breath, who according to God's counsel pleads on behalf of the holy ones. The living God still speaks today. Thanks be to God. Topics surrounding pregnancy have been very much in the news cycles over the last few years. Abortion, pregnancy, maternal health, birth rates, mortality rates, prenatal care, IVF treatment, and establishing a federal registration of pregnancies have occupied the news. More often than not, in these stories, women become political pawns in the discussions. I've seen little attempt to consider what it actually means for a woman to yearn for a child, despite how pregnancy ravages her body. It's this why that occupies Paul's comments in today's passage. What are we yearning for that we consider worth anything akin to the pain, angst, turmoil, and troubles of pregnancy and birthing? What is worth embracing these associated labor pains? I should pause right now for a huge disclaimer. I have never experienced labor pain. I know that's a great shock to many of you. Paul likewise had no experience with labor pains. Neither of us is an expert on labor or birthing. Most of what I know about it comes from a single glance that I gathered from Karen's eyes many years ago. The first real pain of labor hit, and in that glance I saw a host of comments from her. Wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. Can we pause this and go back and reconsider this calmly, and then we'll rethink this whole thing again? Then again, Paul is not using the term in any technical sense. He's not concerned with the details of labor or the details of the pain associated with labor. This is a metaphor used by an observer. It is no attempt to teach us anything about the realities of labor. It's a detached observation of a painful struggle, hopefully giving way to some greatly anticipated reality. Labor pains are not my first go-to when considering the struggle and difficulty required to bring about a new reality. They're not part of my experience of reality, and there's no way they could be. It would be more normative, perhaps, to talk about revolution, to talk about revolt, uprising, insurrection, even a long pilgrimage. It might have been better for Paul to speak of climbing a mountain to enter some new reality, a new perspective, a new plane of experience. But I'm glad he didn't. War, battle, violence, overcoming physical obstacles don't present the same portrait of the reality Paul was trying to present. Bringing a new life into the world through wonder, struggle, and the pain of birth is completely different from those. The gospel of Jesus is not about violence. It's not about wielding power over others. It's not upsetting the political apple cart or even overturning the economic system around us. Granted, there are many things about our political and economic systems that could be vastly improved through aligning them with gospel priorities. Those images and practices, however, focus somewhere other than on the changes brought about within us and their positive impact through our interactions with others. War and violence are the old ways to deal with conflict. They're not simply violent and destructive. They do not edify. They do not build anything. They do not bring about a new reality. They simply reduce what is to rubble. Whatever is rebuilt comes along in spite of the violence enacted, not because of it. Waging of conflict is not creative. It is only ever destructive. Most of the time, what comes in the aftermath is just more of the same. Different actors take on known, long-standing roles. Mozambique had a revolution to throw off Portugal's colonial rule, as I was reminded by one of the interpreters at General Conference. That victory shifted to a civil war, with different parties vying for control in the power vacuum when Portugal pulled out. The Civil War left behind fields and farmland filled with ordnance and landmines. As far as the poor were concerned, they just exchanged one sequence of masters for a new sequence of masters. If anything, life got harder. Nothing new was created. This is the story of one civilization and empire after another throughout the history of the world. Destroying one simply leads to more of pretty much the same thing, even as the actors change. Paul was not seeking more of the same. He talked about something completely new. The reality God was ushering into being was of a completely new character. It does not require the implements of war, violence, or political overthrow. It's not based on destruction. It's an investment in new life of an entirely different quality. It does not require chaos, though its coming may be wrapped in suffering, pain, and turmoil. It is a reality that is not only for ourselves, for our particular party. It's a reality with intent to benefit the whole of creation. Ancient Israel understood that sin was social in its character, more than it was individual. The consequences of sin affected the very land in which they lived. It clung to the fields, the rocks, the roads, the cattle, and the crops. It made the land itself sick. That's why Chronicles speaks of God healing the land if people would repent and seek Yahweh's face. Then Yahweh would heal their land. It's why the flood story has all of creation wiped away in the baptism of the flood for a fresh start. It's why Noah's vineyard seemingly bore fruit immediately upon planting, growing more quickly and powerfully than Jack's beanstalk. It's how those fresh grapes could be pressed directly into wine. The land itself had been purged, removing sin's curse over all the created order. It's this kind of extraordinary reset to which Paul calls our attention. The whole of creation has been struggling in the throes of labor pain, yearning for when the promised deliverance might take place. We also stand among those struggling due to our mismanagement of creation, our failed stewardship of God's created order, our neglecting to honor and follow the ways of God, in our celebration of the gift of God in the outpouring of God's Pentecostal breath upon us, we have received the first blush of hope, of new life, new reality, that new created order. Our experience of this expected and yearned for redemption is not completely fulfilled. The baby is not yet born. It may have crowned, but it has not yet been released into the world. It has not yet taken its first breath. I'm led to believe that with crowning, the worst of the pains of labor have only just begun. The journey may be coming to a close, but the pains of labor are reaching their highest peak. These labor pains have been going on for a long time now. Paul speaks of them as having been continuous since the first actions of the first human beings. Each successive generation has added to the cumulative pain. Though increasing and abating in cycles, we know that our minimum experience of God's love and grace simply point us toward a greater fulfillment that is yet to receive life and its first breath. While we have already been claimed as God's children, we are yet awaiting the full declaration of God's paternity extended over us. In the meantime, we struggle with no understanding even of how we should be praying. We do not understand enough to know how to get ourselves through, much less how to bring others along with us. And yet the same breath that has been bestowed upon the first fruits of our redemption continues to groan alongside us with cries that cannot be put into words. Furthermore, God understands the meaning of those groans, pleas, sighs that we are unable to really express. There is a new life before us. It's a new reality. It's as far into our current experience as Noah's fruitful vineyard to my grapevines taking years to bear fruit. We have only begun to taste the first fruits of God's blessings of love, grace, and mercy. Will we push on toward the fulfillment still ahead? We tell pregnant women to push against or through their pain. What will we do?